Welcome, one, and welcome to all to the greatest show of them all. It is the NFC East Mixtape, which you can listen to on any one of your favorite NFC East blog podcast networks across the SB Nation universe. You can also watch us on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. When I say us, I mean me. My name is RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys. His name is Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, happy Tuesday, March the 5th for us, Wednesday, March the 6th for the loyal listeners, the mixologists, as you love to call them. How you doing?
Not good, RJ. My week got off to a really bad start. And let me acknowledge, these are the first world problems. I get that other people have it actually way more challenging than I do. But Sunday afternoon, I go to my friend's improv show. Shout out to my friend Matt.
Way to go, Matt.
Great time. I go home, and I was wearing my prescription sunglasses on the way home. And I put them back in my case to take out the ones I'm wearing right now. And the arm falls off. And I'm like, oh no. And I can't find the screw that goes to it to fix it. So what do? I go to multiple locations. I was going to say the brand name, but there are no free ads. And I look for a glasses repair kit. You know, that's something you see when you go to the grocery store or whatever. Like, you know, they're usually by the checkout or wherever. It's not a thing that should be hard to find, you would think. Like, that's a pretty common thing that like a pharmacy place or a grocery store has. I had to go to 3 different places, finally find it. I come home. I take the kit out to start, like, you know, repairing my glasses. I drop the screws instantly. So then I'm looking for the screws, which are incredibly tiny.
Without your glasses.
I mean, I still, like, I have it, so I'm wearing it. I'm either wearing my prescription sunglasses, you know, which is the best thing I can see with at this point, or I was kind of also having my glasses and wearing them without one of the arms, which is a very dumb thing, but I needed to see. So I found them finally, and then they don't fit. There's 2 different sizes of screw. One is too big and one is too small. The too small one was like a temporary fix. It held it in place enough to where like
I
could wear them on my face, but you know, if I put them down or anything, like if I flipped them upside down, the screw would fall out. So it was not any kind of, you know, permanent fix at all, just a very temporary thing. So I'm feeling pretty stressed out about this because that whole process of me being dumb and looking for things took like 3 hours, and I felt like I was behind on work, and so it was just like not a good. And then, you know, it's Sunday evening, and there's already, you know, the Sunday scary is like just the anxiety of everything. Whatever. I go to bed. I wake up early, really early on Monday morning, like 5 o'clock early, because I want to get started on the day. I felt behind on work. I was like, you know, okay, glasses thing's annoying. I'm going to try to get it fixed today. But whatever, I'm starting the week out strong. I'm going to, you know, get it off to a productive start. I got to my car. And for the second time since November 2020, I can't start my car normally. Like I start it and it's running rough. It's like really like jumping. It's like it's clearly not okay.
I remember you complaining about this in like a happy hour we did one time. Yeah.
The initial light is on and I'm like, oh no, it's happened again. And sure enough, it did. I opened my hood after I turned off the car, and I see there's a bunch of trash in my engine. And for the second time in like 3 or 4 years, somehow rats have built a nest in my engine. Yeah. And it's just like, it's devastating because like I already went through this, and I'm not even worried about like it getting fixed. I know it got towed, it's going to get fixed. It's like,
now it's inconvenient.
Keep happening.
Yeah.
Like, and so I tell this story in part if any listeners have any advice to prevent this from happening. And I've researched it a lot. I know that they don't like peppermint. I have a peppermint spray.
I remember you talking about this when you brought it up last time.
I spray.
Yeah,
exactly. I spray all around my car. I guess I need to do it even more regularly than I was doing it. But also the way like my car engine is built, it's almost like they could not have made it more convenient for rats to like build a little nest in this little area that they do. So I'm wondering if I can like get some kind of like netting or mesh wire, like metal wire that kind of like could keep them out of there. If anyone has any good advice, I've heard there's the devices called like a mouse blocker where it'll like trigger noise or lights if they go near it. I've seen the success rate on those is kind of hit or miss, so I don't know how I feel about that. If anyone has a good advice and somehow had this issue in the past, I would really appreciate it. But anyway, so that happens. I'm already stressed out about the glasses thing. Now I have to fix the car thing. So the car's towed, fine. I'm walking around yesterday, the city, trying to find any place that does eyeglasses repair. Like I typed it into Apple Maps and I came up with like, a lot of different locations. I had to go to like 5 different places to finally find it. And thankfully one did fix it for $2. And therefore my glasses got fixed. So that problem is solved. But the car thing still looms large. And I really need an answer to this because it's so stressful. I mean, the first time, I'm sorry I'm going long with this, but the first time I hadn't run my car in 2 weeks, so I figured, okay, that was like my bad. That was a dumb mistake by me. It was during COVID, by the way, so it wasn't like I was going anywhere. That was part of the problem. But this time, I just took my car out on Saturday, and so it's not like I wasn't running it. And I spray it pretty regularly. So like I don't even know what to do. I feel helpless. I feel like the rats are unfairly targeting me for no good reason. I've never been mean to the rats. Yeah, if anyone has any advice, I would really appreciate it. You can tweet at me at Brandon Gowton or email me at brandon.gowton@sbnation.com or DM me on Instagram at Brandon Gowton, whatever. Any way you can contact me, I would appreciate any advice that you have.
That is a good opening. I mean, tough.
It's not a good
situation.
opening.
No. Tough situation for you, but good use of the opening. You know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause
Yeah.
the mixologists have always helped out in different capacities. So I'm hopeful, and I will go ahead and say I believe that somebody will be able to help you with your problem. I do, like I said, vividly remember you bringing that up. I think you were drinking wine that day in the happy hour. If
the happy hour.
I know, but you were like the only person that had brought wine to the happy hour. That's all I'm saying.
A virtual happy hour
to try to transition. I mentioned this on Monday Football Monday. Brandon and I were part of a team building exercise last week at SB Nation, and that was why we had to get out of the mixtape early. And it was kind of cool, actually really cool. I got to meet some people that I didn't really know across SB Nation and across this universe, like even beyond football. And there was a trivia portion at the end where we all had to kind of like very publicly try to answer questions. And you answered one that I wanted to give you some props for. It was about the unit of measurement for heat that food carries. What was it called? I know you were worried about the pronunciation, but you nailed it.
I wasn't worried about the pronunciation. It was Scoville. That's the and I know that because we all watch Hot, or a lot of people watch Hot Ones. That's been on there, and I like spicy food in general. So I think I knew it before Hot Ones because I've seen. I think going back to like Man versus Food is probably where I found that out. Shout out to Adam Richman, the legend, the original Man versus Food, and I remember them talking about that a lot. And you can kind of
remember the question that I got right in the trivia.
Yeah, the pituitary gland.
That's right.
Which afterwards, when you got that right, I was like, what other gland would there be? Are there other? I mean, I know there's other glands. Like actually, I know that like conceptually, but like, what other gland are people talking about?
It was a Jeopardy style like question framing, and I forget exactly what the question was. Maybe you can help me out here. But it was something like, "What is the master gland of the body?" Like I'm
something like that. Yeah.
And so that was the only gland that came to mind. And my team was in a spot where we just needed. I really had to kind of go all or nothing. And so I raised my hand and I said, "I'm just going to guess pituitary." And she was like, "Well, your guess was right." And it was really like powerful moment for me. And I would like everyone to know that as I signed off or took myself off the stage, I said, "Des caught it." So that was cool.
But he didn't. And even if he did, they still might have lost. Like, I don't understand why this is a victory.
He did catch it, and that's okay. We're here today to talk not about Des. It is our free agency preview, final thoughts before free agency, whatever you want to call it, pre-agency, blah blah blah.
Wow, that's a good one.
That's a Bill Simmonsism, which I know.
Never mind. I don't like it anymore.
Right. Full disclosure, cards on the table, rats out of the engine. We're recording this on Tuesday, March the 5th. It is 1:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as these words are coming out of my mouth. At this moment, Brandon, we have seen several franchise tags dropped across the NFL. Justin Madubuike of the Baltimore Ravens, Antoine Winfield. We saw Brian Burns earlier on Tuesday. The Houston Texans just agreed to terms on a 3-year deal worth $36 million with Dalton Schultz, former Cowboy. That actually worked out for both Dallas and Houston, the whole state of Texas, because Jake Ferguson was allowed to thrive once Dalton left. I think that those are the big things before we get into each team, right? Am I missing anything?
Maybe, but we'll see as we go along.
Good job. Good potting. Okay, let's start. We're going to kind of go through free agents, although you said you had topics that you wanted to get to. Are you just going to try to weave them in as we move along?
Well, I mean, I think there's things to cover with each team, like a big picture thing.
Okay, so before we get to Dallas Cowboys free agents to be and just kind of rip through the list, headline things happening, and we discussed them in the past for you listeners on Tuesday's roundtable. So go back in your pod feeds or on the YouTube channel. You can check that out. Dak Prescott spoke publicly for the first time on Monday with a goatee. Really kind of freaked people out.
Copying Jalen Hurts, who just shaved his goatee.
But announced that he is now a father. So congratulations to the Prescott family on the birth of his daughter. He spoke very optimistically about an extension happening, which conceivably would happen by this time next week for the listener. Start by the start of the new league year. Could have happened before this episode comes out. Who knows? He, like everybody else, doesn't know what Jerry Jones meant by all in. And since we last recorded, both Steven and Jerry walked that back at the NFL Combine, predictably so. And he said that he doesn't think the Cowboys have a culture problem, which has also been a hot button topic as of late. So those are kind of the big issues going on before we get to the free agent list, unless you have something you want to work in.
No, just the Dak thing, because it seems like, I mean, you said this for the people who didn't listen to the SB Nation NFL show. Like,
shame on them.
Yeah, you're pretty frustrated with the Cowboys and how they're handling this, because as we've talked about on here, I think we've just kind of discussed it as a relatively foregone conclusion, just because like they kind of have to in terms of what makes the most sense to figure out something with Dak's contract, as opposed to just let it ride. Like, letting it ride is the worst case scenario, right? Within reason, obviously, like cutting him, but they're not going to cut him.
There were a lot of takes that were like, "Oh, the salary cap was bigger than expected, so the $60 million cap hit isn't that bad." It's like, it's still bad. Like,
that's not true. That's dumb.
I know that's a dumb way to spin this. My least preferred outcome is doing nothing. I prefer at least more than that, restructuring him and alleviating salary cap space. But there are so many people, and I know you've heard this at different times in the past with different Eagles. Well, he should take less so they could spend money to help the team. First of all, that's not his job. I mean, so that's like the most important thing here. Second, actually, number one is his daughter was just born. Like he has a family that he should prioritize, like everybody would in their own job, or own walk of life. But number two, it's not his job. Number three, Brandon, who was reported on Monday by the Dallas Morning News, what Jerry and Steven basically said all last week in their own words, that the Cowboys do not plan on going all in, that they don't plan on being really all too active in free agency, which is kind of par for the course as of late. So I want you to, for a second, imagine you're Dak Prescott, and congratulations on being a superior quarterback to Jalen Hurts. But second of all, why would you take less when your team is promising to not do anything with it? You know what I mean? Like, the idea that he should take less so they can do more when they are literally saying they won't is so dumb to me.
Yeah, the taking less thing just doesn't happen. That's not a real thing that happens in sports, with very few exceptions. I guess you could say
it's a movie thing. It's a fictionalized hero worship weird thing.
People will point to Tom Brady, but there was some, I think it's fair to say, some like very strong suspicions of under the table dealings, plus the weird relationship that the Patriots had with the TB12 company and everything. There was some weird stuff going on there anyway. And then from an organization that did get caught for cheating multiple times. So other than that, and also I think you could say Mahomes, he's taken like clearly under market value. It was a big, total commitment by the Chiefs. But he's still up there. He's not like a bottom.
Well, and they've also redone his deal since to commensurate him,
exactly.
And also incredibly unique circumstances.
Yeah. So
and sorry, just on that front, they lost the Super Bowl. Why? Because their offensive line was horrible. So what was like the first thing they did? They went out and spent all this money on the offensive line. So if you're Mahomes, at least you're inclined to believe that if you do take less, not that you should, but if you do, that they will live up to their end of the bargain. Whereas, everybody acts like, I didn't mean to hijack your point, but it's unique to Dak in that, oh, well, they'll spend the money if they have it. They literally had him on one of the cheapest possible deals they could have as a fourth-round rookie and didn't capitalize then. So if you're Dak, why would you believe that circumstances would change now?
There's also the element, and people don't really necessarily care about this, although I think they should, in the bigger picture, in terms of these people are human beings, that, the owners are billionaires and the athletes are millionaires, and it's for the greater good of your fellow players in the NFL, which most of them are in the union, if not all of them, whatever. You want to keep pushing the ceiling up. You want to keep raising the ceiling on your position and how much money you make. That collectively benefits everyone. So you're not going to artificially deflate the market by taking less and therefore bringing the cost down. Like, the owners have the money and the cap keeps going up. They shouldn't be taking less. It's fine. Any quarterback should be getting what they're worth. No one can begrudge a player or should begrudge a player for doing that.
And everyone has to go through this. Like, this is not a problem unique to the Cowboys. When Jalen Hurts signed his deal, was it 52 million APY? Is that correct?
I forget exactly, but it was literally, the highest
Yeah, like he was that for like literally like 48 hours because then Lamar
quarterback
Jackson
in the NFL. And then,
yeah,
and
I
then,
mean, so the same phenomenon will happen. Everyone's going to freak out, assuming this does happen, about the number, but it's silly. So are you ready to look at the list of Cowboys free agents to be? We have the list on the screen.
Wow.
A benefit to
wow, I'm looking at it right now.
This is why you should watch on YouTube. We love the podcast audience, don't get me wrong, but if you're an Eagles fan, go to the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel, subscribe. You get more than just the mixtape. You get all sorts of shows. If you're a Cowboys fan, go to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, subscribe. You obviously get more than just the mixtape. And Brandon, did you know that this is a BTB thing? I think you would pick us in this fight. We are hunting down Arrowhead Pride. Speaking of the Chiefs, to become the most subscribed to SB Nation YouTube channel, outside of,
I care
obviously.
as it relates to more mixtape views for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can find a way to have a vested interest, then by all means, but help us out, people. Go subscribe. Anyway, Rico Dowdle.
By the way, sorry for a quick plug. Also, the Bleeding Green Nation podcast channel is like, I think something 50 stars away from a 2K ratings total, or like at 1950. And so let's get us up to 2,000.
If you're a BTBer, go give some stars and a rating to you don't have to subscribe to BGN. And if you're a BGNer, I understand if you don't want to contaminate your algorithm by subscribing to us. But maybe go find a
drop a like or something, right? Comment.
That will contaminate your algorithm. I'll be honest with you, but not as much. So help out however you can. But anyway, Rico Dowdle. I think we're gonna have to move through these kind of quickly. I don't want to be rude to anybody, but not a pressing concern for the Cowboys to bring back Tony Pollard. I mentioned last week, Bill Barnwell's projection for him was somewhere between $4 and $6 million per year, along with Devin Singletary. I would be totally fine with $5 million per year, 2-year deal. Tony Pollard, sign me up.
We've already talked about Pollard a lot and the running back situation.
Chuma Edoga, there will be a new version of him this year. Sorry to say. Tyron Smith, there was also the news over the weekend.
That's the big news.
That he is unlikely to return to the team. Now,
how do you feel about that?
Well, until he doesn't, I'm not going to panic, but
let's say he doesn't. How do you feel about that?
I'm pretty panicked. In a vacuum, this isn't that big of a deal. Okay, in a vacuum, oh no, granted, future Hall of Fame tackle is going to leave. That sucks. But he also, prior to last season, and you had heard me complain about this a million times, he had missed 33 or 50 games. So in a vacuum, on one very weird hand, I applaud the Cowboys for you have to move on at a certain point and stop living in the ambiguity. But if you're going to say you're all in, if you're going to be like, man, we've got to try this out, we've got to do everything we can. It was also reported that Mike Zimmer's deal, I think I told you, with the Cowboys is a 1-year deal. If you're kind of lining up everything that kind of chips all in whatever this season, then you kind of have to bring Tyron back. You're almost forced to. And if this is about money, which a lot of people suspect it to be, kind of a bad luck for the Cowboys, because if there was a contract, if there was a dude who was team friendly and took less and who allowed his team to sign him to a long-term deal so they could restructure and kick the can down the road over and over and over again, it's Tyron. So I don't say you owe it to him, but you kind of owe it to him to give him, an awesome last year deal, one last time, keep the band together, whatever. If he leaves, I absolutely want him to go to the Kansas City Chiefs, win a Super Bowl. It feels somewhat similar to the DeMarcus Ware thing, not quite apples to apples, but definitely in that neighborhood.
I was gonna bring that up. I was gonna say that I think this is like the next DeMarcus Ware.
10 years later, exactly 10 years later.
10 years since almost that Tyron Smith played a full season, the last one in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where it's not like the running back thing. You're not going to wait out the market on Tyron Smith. There's going to be the state of offensive line play in the NFL, and specifically at tackle. Like some team, again, the Chiefs, like you just said, are such a no-brainer kind of team to do that. There's going to be a team out there that I think finds a way to sign him to, I don't know what kind of deal it is, 1 year or whatever, but I think he's going to be gone. If the Cowboys don't make this strong effort to keep him, I think he is going to find a better offer somewhere else.
Well, and if we look at the list here, under Tyron's name is Tyler Biadasz. So we don't know yet, Brandon. I assume we'll pick up some more ideas, obviously, as we get closer to the draft. And every mock you look at has Dallas taking a tackle, but that could be to play right tackle. It's interesting to me how both Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper have insinuated that Terrence Steele's job could be up for debate or could be a competition. they can get out of that deal next year, but they did give it to him just a year ago. But either way, if we assume Tyler Smith kicks out to left tackle, that's one new position. Granted, he's played it before. You have a new left guard, so that's 2. If Tyler Biadasz is gone and the Dallas Morning News expects him to be, that's 3. Okay. Zach Martin's obviously back. And if you have a rookie or whoever else playing right tackle instead of Terrence Steele, at the very least, you're talking about 60% of your offensive line being different in week 1 than it was in the wild card loss.
That's a lot.
Potentially 80%. And granted, some of that is just being literal because Tyler Smith has obviously been there before. But still, it's a lot of change to throw at a team with a lot of expectation.
That had a good offensive line too. It's not like, oh, the offensive line stunk and now we're trying to upgrade it from being bad. It's like, no, it was good. And now there's a lot of moving parts on it. And even if, again, like you said, you're having Tyler Smith, the same player, back in terms of who's going to be next to him, that's conceivably going to be an entirely new player. So there's a whole chemistry thing going on there. And I think the Biadasz thing from afar kind of seems like the Dalton Schultz situation from last year, where I think I guess a team might just kind of come in over the top of what the Cowboys would really want to pay to keep him. I'm going to guess he moves on too, unless there just isn't a market for him. And I don't know, at that point, it's kind of hard to gauge the center market, not something that is maybe the most robust thing. But yeah, the lack of continuity there could be an issue.
I don't expect him to be back just based on reports and based on what we know to this point. Dorrance Armstrong, also not quite that, but feels like somebody else might be more willing to pay. That contract really delivered for Dallas. Everybody thought it was going to blow up in their face when they let Randy Gregory walk, so kudos to him. Dante Fowler, I think, is the most likely to follow Dan Quinn to Washington. I really don't know if you know this, but Dan Quinn was part of the group that recruited him to Florida, so he's been with Dan for a long time. So that
he's been bopping around the NFL too for a while,
right? Neville Gallimore, I thought the Cowboys might cut him if 53-man roster cut down. So, I mean, that's that. Jonathan Hankins, they've really valued, and I would feel much better about letting him walk if Mozzie Smith had shown any kind of development. But I think they're almost kind of forced to rely on Mozzie developing in year 2. So that might mean Jonathan's out. Stephon Gilmore, I do think they maybe find a way to bring back on a 1-year deal of sorts. You know, he really helps them. I think we're assuming that Trayvon Diggs is just going to be his full and total self coming back from the ACL. And while that is, not necessarily something that is impossible, it's not necessarily something that's super likely either. So having Diggs, having Gilmore, having Bland allows you to get to a bridge year, or is a bridge year to get you to 2025 when it becomes the full Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland show.
The Gilmore thing's a little tricky considering his age, and I said this about the Eagles cornerbacks last year too, when we saw what happened with James Bradbury, who totally just fell off a cliff. Gilmore's multiple years older than James Bradbury, and not to say that he can't hang on considering, maybe he turns in another good season like he did last year. But my point being that the cliff is steep, and it also, I think, is more closer. It's closer in front of you than you typically think it might be. So
he looked a little washed. I would say almost right before the Eagles game, the one that you had no interest in. That was like his best, his breakout game, and then he really just kind of stayed on that course for the rest of the season. And so, to your point, you have no idea when it's just going to kind of dissipate or whatever.
Yeah, he'll be 34 in September, so getting up there.
I do think you have to kind of make that bet right now if you're him. Nothing's really worked out for the Cowboys at corner in terms of draft picks or whatever, except for Trayvon and Bland, which sounds like nothing or everything. But I mean, depending on how you look at it, but they need that third body is my point, because I think they're letting Jordan Lewis walk. It's just time. I wouldn't be stunned if on the subject of following people, he loves Jim Harbaugh. I wouldn't be stunned at all if he goes to the Chargers. So we'll see. J-Ron Curse, another candidate in my mind to follow Dan Quinn. He's like the penultimate, or not the ultimate Dan Quinn guy. And Trent Sieg, long snapper. All due respect to Trent Sieg, a long snapper is a long snapper is a long snapper, an old statism. So that's kind of where we're at on the Cowboys.
All right.
Before we get to the Eagles list, Jason Kelce retired. I'm certain that you guys had a BGN radio thing about it, but just briefly from a Cowboys perspective, if it matters to you, maybe the most likable Eagle of all time, the least hateable, which is a different thing. Very annoying how likable and not hateable he is / was. Now, he had moments where it was easy to hate him, like when he screamed in Damone Clark's face or whatever. That felt theatrical and just living up to the Philly culture of it all. But I will say it is cool that he lived up to the Philly culture. I don't like the Philly culture whatsoever, but it is cool that it became his home and he made it his home, and he lived up to what people who call it their home want it to be. Like that's a really, really rare thing in the world of sports. So congratulations to Jason Kelce.
I don't think there's anything performative about Jason Kelce. I think he's pretty authentic. I think he leans into being authentic, which you could argue that's performative.
I think there's something
don't
performative
think so.
to being Philly sports sometimes, and that's what he leaned into sometimes. That's all.
I think he's incredibly authentic, and I think that's why people love him so much. And yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it, and Jason Kelce is basically what I think you would dream of as a kid. Is like everything you would want from one of your favorite athletes ever. Like won a championship, delivered that incredible speech on the steps of the art museum.
I saw you retweet that on. So if anybody wants to revisit that, go to Brandon's Twitter. He retweeted it on Monday.
I'll watch that. I watched that this morning, and it makes me tear up because I think there's just a really relatable theme to everything in terms of I think we've all, and I think I've touched on this before. You feel like you've doubted yourself at some point in life, and to kind of have that validation, it's so healing, and I think to the point where it brings tears, or it just makes you really appreciate that and being able to accomplish something so great. And like this is what it's all about. Like the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. That's the entire. Well, it was like the entire point of my life for a long time because like I didn't have other hobbies outside of the Eagles, or at least strongly. Like that was everything to me, and for caring about it so much, and to actually see it happen, and for him to like perfectly encapsulate and be this relatable figure and memorialize it in this way that'll last forever. Like what more could you want? What more could you ask for? Like he was an incredible player who was awesome. And even better, like he still lives on because he's going to be doing his podcast or whatever. Like it's not like that's kind of the nice thing. It's not like Jason Kelce is just going to be going away and he's going to be in a darkness retreat and he isn't in social media. It's nice, it sucks that he won't be playing on the field, but it's nice that we'll still get to see him be part of this ecosystem and both covering the NFL and then specifically when it comes to giving insight to the Eagles as well. So it's tough to really even like say anything unique on Jason Kelce because he's just his resume, his track record speaks for itself, and he's awesome. And it's going to be a huge loss for the Eagles. I don't think people, and we can get into this too if you want, in terms of like how they can replace him or whatever. But
Tyler Biadasz.
I mean, Cam Jurgens is the in-house replacement, but I want to maybe this is obvious, but Cam Jurgens can be like awesome, and he still will be a major downgrade from Jason Kelce. It's like that's how incredible of a player he was.
I think that we often feel like when you get older and when you do what we do, you realize that not everybody who plays for the team cares as much as like you want them to, right? Like it is a job.
Yeah.
And the cool part about players like Jason Kelce, and this exists in other sports, but it is rare, is he felt like a fan that cared, or he cared like a fan, which is a dream of a thing. Like I'm kind of on the beginnings of that ride with Wemby in San Antonio. Like it feels like he really values what being a Spur is, right? Like, and there's a unique culture to that, and it felt like Kelce. I wouldn't even say identified with that as much as he helped build it. It was a different thing. Like he was a part of. I don't know. I mean, I certainly can't speak to it, but one of the greatest runs in Eagles history. It's not a dynasty or anything like that.
In terms of they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Like,
and almost won another one.
Yeah. So I think there's an argument to be made that he's the greatest Eagles player of all time. I mean, that's, again, a conversation for a different day, and I'm not fit to have that conversation personally. But as it relates to Eagles free agents, Marcus Mariota, again, YouTube's bumping. All right. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channels, what are you doing?
Mariota's gone. He stunk in preseason.
Yeah. You ripped through this.
Want to do something else. Rashad Penny didn't even play last year. It made no sense why he was on the team. They didn't want to play him. He's gone. Boston Scott, maybe they bring him back. He's like a third or fourth running back, whatever. Swift is in the same camp as Tony Pollard for me in terms of like, and Saquon Barkley, like wait out the market. You can resign him if the price drops, and if some other team wants to overpay for him, like a team last year did with Miles Sanders and the Panthers, then you say, good luck. Thank you for everything, DeAndre Swift. Kind of wait that out. Julio, I think, she's just kind of done. Should retire. Had that what should have been the Julio Jones game against the Cardinals, but then the Eagles obviously blew it. Quez Watkins, my BGN Radio co-host Jimmy Kempsky did like the stay or go poll for every player on the Eagles roster, and Quez Watkins finished in dead last in terms of stay percentage with like 2.9% or something. He's gone. I like Olamide Zaccheaus. I'd bring him back on a one-year deal for cheap.
You have way too rose-colored glasses here. I mean, you argued for him to be on the all NFC East team last year. I mean,
I like OZ. I think good things happen.
He had the cool touchdown against the Bills. That's it. That's the only play he made on.
Yeah, he also had the the trick play punt conversion against the Cowboys. So they didn't use him enough, but whatever. Take or leave him. Jack Driscoll probably. That's. I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds of a backup offensive tackle, but we'll see. I think he might get more money than the Eagles would want to pay him in more of a role. Sua Opeta is kind of take it or leave it. Jason Kelce obviously is gone. The Eagles will have him on their roster until June 1st, I believe, because then for salary purposes, that's just how that works out. Brandon Graham will be back. He said he wants to be back for I think his 15th season, and it's kind of going to be like the retirement tour. It'll be his last season. Everyone will know that going into it. There's buzz over the weekend that Fletcher Cox is going to retire and follow Jason Kelce out the door. It's a little surprising to me because he played pretty. I thought he was better last year than he was in 2022.
You laughed at my belief, and I always believed.
So I feel like if he wants to get like one more, year and one more good deal, I think that has to be out there for him. But maybe he just decides, he doesn't want to put his body on the line anymore, and I respect that. Zach Cunningham, I think, is a guy you kind of wait out the market on, like DeAndre Swift, but to a lesser extent in terms of really caring if he's back. Shaq Leonard is done, dude. His body is just like.
Oh, but dude, he picked the Eagles over the Cowboys.
But he's just done. That's done. Nicholas Morrow gone. He was like kind of the face of the linebacker struggles last year. Roby gone. Might be done at the end of his career. The Eagles cut Kevin Byard. That was an obvious move. They saved like $13 million in cap space. Justin Evans might be physically done. Rick Lovato is the long snapper. He'll be back. And then Braden Mann was actually a pretty good find by Howie Roseman, considering their punter was an issue for them. So I expect them to re-sign him.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Howie didn't have a big like Howie moment this past year. Like Jalen Carter fell to them. That really wasn't really Howie. You know what I mean? I'm not saying whatever, but like like the AJ Brown trade was like brilliant. I mean, you know what I mean? Like that was Howie like studying, finding, executing. It felt like anything he kind of did last year didn't necessarily age well. I mean, as evidenced by the fact that if none of these free agents came back, Braden Mann assigned, I guess, I don't think you would be devastated.
They weren't in the position to spend like they were in 2022, though, because they had a lot of players who, were up for deals, and obviously like CJGJ and Javon Hargrave and TJ Edwards and Kaiser White and Marcus Epps and so on. They were in position to lose a lot of players. That was always going to be the reality. And I'd said at the time to you and here on the podcast that was my, like the frustration of losing the Super Bowl is you had this chance and now you're going to lose a bunch of good players. And that was why it was costly. So, they didn't really have that, but they weren't in a position, I would say, to have that other than the Jalen Carter thing.
Is there a free agent that for the Cowboys it would? I mean, Tyron is the answer, but I mean we've already kind of made our piece. But so Stephon Gilmore might be my other one. Is there a free agent on the Eagles that if they lose, it's just a matter of like, oh, that sucks?
Not really. I mean, I think it would be nice to get Swift back on a market friendly deal, like a deal. You wait out the market on Swift and he comes back on a cheap deal, like that would be nice. But I don't really care who is the running back as long as they get a good deal. I don't really think there's any must-keep players other than Brandon Graham, who I want back. But
that's just personal BLG-ness.
I think he's actually a good role player too. I think it lines up perfectly. But yes, that does factor in.
Do we want to take a break and then move on?
I think that's all that's been going on in Eagles World, right? Yeah. By the way, there has been rumors of a CJGJ return to Philly, but we'll see.
Oh, that toothpaste is out of the tube. Can he put it back in? We'll discuss right after this. Welcome back. Brandon, have you ever tried to put toothpaste back into a tube?
No.
I mean, neither. So, I mean, that was a weird
what kind
dramatic
of toothpaste
break.
You use? Like what flavor? Not the brand. Like are you like a spearmint or what color? Is it white? Is it blue?
It's white. It's generally white. Sometimes a blue streak.
I like the one that has like the red, white, and blue kind of thing. I don't really get that one ever, but I like when you, I don't know, use it maybe in like get like a little pack, like a travel pack or something. Like a situation where you're not using your normal toothpaste. A very normal thing.
Are you an electric toothbrush person?
Yeah, for sure.
I was gonna say I could totally see you being an electric toothbrush guy. So
the dentist said I should be. So I just, I blindly listen to them.
How do you know the dentist is in cahoots with the electric toothbrush company? He's just trying to make a sale.
I mean, I haven't had.
If the dentist had said you should get one and here's a promotional code so that you can, I mean, that would seem like your dentist actually looking out for you.
I feel like less cavity issues and stuff since I've been using the electric toothbrush. So I think it's a pretty good recommendation. Aquafresh is specifically what I was thinking of when it came to the red, white, and blue toothpaste.
What do you think our IT department will think when they're like, checking our computer stuff and they're like, Brandon searched Aquafresh.
Mm.
Like,
I think they have bigger fish to fry, or at least I would hope
um,
they do.
okay. So the New York might be kind of sort of maybe barely good at football once again.
Mm.
Giants. Here is a look at their free agents. Shout out once again to our
Oh, I
YouTube
thought we were going to get
audience.
to the topic and then talk to the free agents.
What was the topic?
Headline from Big Blue View: Rich
Oh, okay.
Eisen, Giants, quote, absolutely done, end quote, with Daniel Jones. And
Rich Eisen made some news this week based on his
Yeah.
time at the combine. Did just a quick filibuster. He mentioned that the Vikings could be in on Trey Lance, and
I saw that on
Trey's from
Locked On the Boys.
Minnesota. Yeah, and if Kirk Cousins leaves to Atlanta, which is the PFT rumor at least, that obviously opens the door for opportunity even more. So I would love a world where Dallas could, hopefully recoup their investment or even maximize it. But
You have to say the P. The P is
I don't
not
have to say it at all. But if they could at least mitigate the damage, I'm all for that. But that being said,
I mean, I think that's wish casting. I mean, they might be able to trade him, but you're getting more than what you gave up for. That doesn't make
okay. But if you can just, even if you break even, Minnesota's fourth round pick is higher.
That's not how it works.
Well, if you trade him for Minnesota's fourth round pick, that's
how did he become more valuable? He's
all
fewer
I'm
year
saying,
in his deal.
Well, because he's valuable to the Vikings. I mean, again, I'm not saying that I support the logic. I know, I agree with you, but I just want it to happen. So if they could trade him for a fourth round pick, that's a better fourth round pick than Dallas's that San Francisco has. So
here's the exact quote from Rich Eisen on Daniel Jones.
Okay.
The Giants are absolutely done with Daniel Jones. Might have to play him this year, but that ain't it, and they feel that ain't it. The words I heard at the combine multiple times were buyer's remorse.
I mean,
that makes sense, but this is also very definitive in that, and I think this lends to the idea that we've been talking about, that I think they are going to draft a quarterback with their first round pick. I think that barring some situation where they just can't get up high enough or something, I think they're going to be aggressive about trying to get one. I think they are not really ready to just be like, we're fine with Daniel Jones.
We will have Ed on as we get closer to the draft, obviously, to get the pulse of the Giants. But we still have a month and change to go, about like 6 weeks. But with regards to free agents, because you're getting too far ahead, this is a look at all the free agents on the Giants. It starts with the quarterback position. Tyrod Taylor probably gone, right? Because Daniel Jones is now the Tyrod for whoever it is.
Unless okay, yeah, I don't see it.
Saquon not going to be tagged. That was officially announced on Tuesday before we started recording. I think the odds-on favorite for team to land him is the Houston Texans, and so I would love to see that, but it feels like his days here are over.
Yeah, unless there's just all the running backs, there's no market for them, and they just end up going back to their own teams.
I know I speak for a lot of Eagles fans, but maybe not necessarily you, because you're Mr. We aren't. But it will be nice to root for Saquon, because he's a cool dude. You know what I mean? Like I want to be able to root for him, and we haven't been able to. So I really want him to end up in Houston. So
maybe he'll end up in Dallas or Philly. Highly possible.
Matt Breida probably not coming back, right? I mean,
no.
Paris Campbell,
man,
no. I thought that had
failed.
Who was the last
slot receiver signings?
I was gonna say, who was the last wide receiver they signed that worked out for them? It's been tough.
They signed?
Yeah, I mean, this was the biggest one since Kenny Golladay, and that really blew up in their face. So, yeah, Sterling Shepard might be done in the NFL, right? I mean, who knows? Matt Pert, Ben Breederson, Tyre Phillips, Justin Pugh, Jihad Ward, Ashawn Robinson, Isaiah Simmons, Darnay Holmes, Adoree Jackson. I mean, if you're looking at this list on the screen, Xavier McKinney's probably coming back. He might get franchise tagged by the time this goes out.
Or transition tag. There's been talk he might do that.
But I think he's probably the only name on here that if I'm a Giants fan, I care about. No offense.
Isaiah Simmons was better than expected, I think, last year. Low expectations. They got him for a low cost. I think if they could resign him to a deal that isn't crazy, I don't know what his market's going to be like if a team wants to take a swing on his upside. But I think Giants fans would like to see him back if they could get him on a reasonable deal. And perhaps there's something to the thinking that this is the more, maybe he's found some footing in the league, although, no more different defensive coordinator now. So I don't know how that plays into things, but yeah. Adoree Jackson, was that the same guy as the Giants' new defensive coordinators used to be from the Titans, but I guess they're still going to move on from him no matter what.
Yeah, it's just kind of time. There's again not a name there that I think is whoa.
Other than McKinney, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a boring free agency for the NFC East so far. Do you have any other Giants takes or topics that you want to get to before we move on to Washington?
No, other than I meant to look up the Giants cap space, so we can move on to Washington. The Giants, or wait, no, I have it right here actually. So obviously, we know the Commanders have a ton of cap space in part because they don't have a franchise quarterback contract on the books. But if you look at effective cap space for the Giants, they're like they're just outside of the top 10 there, so they have some money to spend.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Russell Wilson doesn't need a new home, although he's not joining any new team for on a deal that requires a lot of cap space because of the situation. But I'm just excited to take my talent somewhere.
Somewhere. That's. I mean, you're not like it's an accurate represent. I don't think so. Sheil Kapadi, I saw he said this, and Sheil used to cover Russ when he was on the Seahawks beat for ESPN. So he feels especially attuned to Russ. I mean, we all have seen it too, but like we did the quarterback landing spot activity for the SB Nation NFL show last week, and I didn't have Russ landing anywhere. And Sheil was also like, I don't think Russ gets a starting job somewhere. He might, be able to be somewhere where he competes for the starting job, but I don't think he's going anywhere like as the definitive starter.
I think that you are, I don't want to say making the mistake. Like I think you're wrong, but I think you're making the mistake of looking at being a starter as a pass-fail proposition because so many people, as a result of the last week, like the combine week, are not convinced that Justin Fields is a starting quarterback in the NFL, and now that Russell Wilson is a starting quarterback in the NFL. I hate to break it to these people, there are 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like whether or not
they call from the Netherlands. Should I pick it up?
No, let Russ pick it up. Hey,
like sorry, this is the phone number, but yeah, Netherlands. Anyway,
yeah,
hey, you're doing the thumbs up bubble for some reason.
I'm a big fan of the Netherlands. Because
you're a big fan of the Netherlands.
But I mean, my point is like, I don't think that they passed the pass-fail quarterback, starter Worcestershire test or whatever litmus test. But there are like more teams than not have below average starting quarterbacks these days. So that's why I do think that Russell will find a home. So my pick was Vegas.
I'm not saying he won't find a home, but I just don't think he's going anywhere to being like, this is
the
guy.
I think he'll be a starter, and I think it will be Vegas. That
he might end up being a starter, but I don't think he's going to like sign with the explicit intention of he's a starter, no questions asked.
It won't be Washington because they have the second overall pick in the draft.
Well,
Jacoby Brissett is. I saw some chatter like right now. This is the time of year where you get like ooh buzz, ooh news, ooh blah. Jacoby Brissett regarded as like the best backup quarterback on the market. I don't know that I buy that, but I mean,
on the idea of Russ to Washington, that's actually a topic on Hogs Haven where at the end of the article, which outlines the case, I guess for against him, whatever. And the summary is my argument in favor of pursuing Russell Wilson is that he is a great fit for the 2024 and parentheses maybe 2025 Commanders. It costs no draft capital to acquire him. He has every incentive to sign a league minimum deal for 2024 short-term contract, and he's a 12-year veteran who proved last season that he can still play at a competitive level. So you could do the like make the rookie compete for the starting job thing with Russ there, which kind of got me thinking. I think there's sense to training Sam Howell because he was taken with like a 5th-round pick, earliest 5th-round pick. I think you could flip him for maybe a 4 that can become a 3 because he has value. He's proved he can play somewhat. At the very least, he's proven he can be a good backup or a decent backup to have, especially for the cost. Backup quarterbacks in the NFL today, if you're talking like a veteran, cost like $5 million.
He has more value in that archetype than he does the aging veteran who's competing with the young hotshot second overall pick, which is what you want Russell to be. It's always been my dream to be on an NFC East team because I'm a mixologist and I love the NFC East mixtape with RJ and Brandon. And so now that I'm a commander, take command. I can be a weekly, maybe recurring guest. I'd love to add some songs to that playlist. Maybe something dangerous. Yeah.
I've said this to you before, and
I get to play for the other Washington team. Yeah.
The original Washington football team. Stats when he
I'm sorry.
Wilson.
I'm sorry. Quickly, the Seahawks. Speaking of, this is just the way things go this time of year. According to Ian Rappaport, are releasing Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams.
Oh, okay. Quandre Diggs, interesting. Anyway, stats. his interview with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson never recovered after that. Like that was the last
Oh,
year Russell Wilson played well before Stats interviewed him, and then afterwards it's just been downhill since then. So Stats kind of ended Russell Wilson's career, which is very fitting because Stats was tortured by Russell Wilson for many years as a 49ers fan. So he
he's
kind
told
of
him that to his face.
yeah, yes. So and that's a really good interview, by the way. I know that's like it's multiple years old, but I rewatched that. I guess close to the Super Bowl. So I just came across it and I was like, man, that's more. We need to see more interviews like that because Stats was like pushed back. He wasn't just like kissing his butt.
I've said
He
many
also wasn't
times.
disrespectful. He wasn't like
Yes,
a jerk or mean. He was just didn't want to. And to Russ's credit, Russ played along and Russ understood that he wasn't. This isn't someone being hostile with me, like to be like a jerk. It's because he's a 49ers fan. He obviously has his own angle. So that's a really good interview if you want to go back and look at that.
I've said many, many, many times, Stats is the best interviewer I've ever come across. Nobody does it like him. Nobody is as prepared as him. Nobody can go anywhere the way he can. In fact, the promotion, correct me if I'm wrong, since you watched it, was like Subway, and I think Russ signed the sandwich or something.
He had an edible ink marker that he
signed.
signed.
I will say like that is an underrated thing about Russ that he goes with the joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so. Kudos
he's
to
not
him.
I guess I don't want to say he isn't aloof because I think he kind of might be in some cases, but he's definitely not like dumb. He's not dumb. He knows what's going on.
I think it is representative of the Commanders' free agency class that we had an entire conversation while they were on the screen next to us.
Well, I mean, this is all about resetting too, with a new coach.
Yeah, like
a new
I don't know that we
GM.
have to. This is a lot of names. Like I don't know anyone on this list that you have to have back.
I mean, they cut Logan Thomas, they cut Charles Leno, and who else?
There's more. I'm scrolling down. Cameron Curl had the 5 moments or 5 minutes.
Curl will be kind of interesting to see what they do with him, but I mean, I think for the most part, you're just resetting all of this. If you can get someone back on a 1-year deal, fine. But I don't think there's any really must-have cornerstone pieces here that you're looking at.
Who gets a bigger deal in free agency, Cameron Curl or Jamal Adams?
Oh, Cameron Curl, easily.
Right?
Easily. I mean, does Jamal Adams get a deal? I mean, I guess, but
Jamal Adams wasn't quite Earl Thomas in the Fever, but that was a weird 3 months around Blogging the Boys when he I
remember that.
To them. So
the Eagles were in that too, at least from a fan perception. There was a lot of clamoring for him.
There isn't a player that the Cowboys have been connected to that the Eagles won where it worked out. Nnamdi, DeMarco, all failed. So
Carson Wentz. You just won a Super Bowl when Carson Wentz was their starting quarterback.
I forgot that that he was on their Senior Bowl team. That's right. When they were the coaches in 2016. So, okay, that is the list of the Washington Commanders free agents. So,
wow,
yeah. Anything else on Commanders, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys? Anything before we kind of start to pack this up and move on out?
No, other than I because you kind of got it deviated from my point there, but I do think the Commanders should trade Sam Howell. I do think that would make sense for them.
I mean, that's not a free agent. I guess it is an offseason thing, but maybe he's one of those I talked about Russ and Fields will ultimately get starting jobs because there's not a lot of great dudes. Maybe Sam Howell is one of those guys, you know what I mean, who winds up being a starter somewhere. Maybe that's one of the weird things that we're kind of waiting on. Here's a question for you. Who casts the most seismic vote, so to speak, in Survivor terms relative to the NFC East this year? I think it's Kirk Cousins. I mean, I think that so much of the NFL depends on what he decides to do. Because if Kirk leaves and opens the door for Trey Lance being traded, that really impacts the Cowboys at least.
You're talking about what's the biggest domino to fall that could impact the division.
Yeah. Maybe it's just the running back market. That's probably the real answer. If there is some musical chairs that happen here. I mean,
which division does the NFC East play? I forget in 2024.
The AFC
division, which entire division? Although I guess what is the whole schedule? Because that's interesting to think about. If now you have to face Kirk.
I have it right here. 1 second. I
know the Eagles play the Falcons.
1 second. I have it. I'm looking.
Yes.
Here we go.
What just came up?
The Cowboys play. The NFC East plays the AFC North and the NFC South. Those are the divisions.
Okay. Yeah. So the Kirk thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone could be playing Kirk potentially if he goes to Atlanta, and certainly a lot better than Desmond Ridder or whatever else, or Justin Fields or whatever else they could possibly do, really, conceivably, and certainly,
and
not really in a position to draft
and
one.
I know he hasn't. I know like the only team Kirk's been connected to right now is Atlanta, but Pittsburgh remains in the fold for whether it's Kirk or Russ or Fields. Again,
I can see Russ to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I have trouble seeing Kirk or Fields. I just don't think those aren't like Steelers players. That's not what the Steelers do.
yeah,
Like,
they're
when you
not
just
like
look at
they're not like hardened enough to be Steelers.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like the Steelers aren't taking the guy who's lost so many games. You can say it's not all his fault, but it's not who they're going after. They're not going after a guy who is like this terrible win-loss record. That's not what the Steelers do.
So Kirk, the biggest domino to fall because he could potentially join the Falcons, who every team will play, and therefore he could. And was it in 2019? They swept the division. The Vikings did when they played. That was the year that they won their playoff game, obviously. So, and it would be fascinating to see Mike Zimmer go up against him, new Cowboys defensive coordinator.
Okay,
so
fascinating is a little strong.
Look at all the cross pollination, by the way. Against Kirk in Atlanta, where Dan Quinn used to be the head coach, and Dan Quinn now the head coach in Washington, where Kirk used to be the quarterback. That's just
I have a Sam Howell landing spot, which could also potentially impact the NFC East as it relates to them playing the NFC South. I think the Saints make a lot of sense for him because you have Derek Carr there. You don't really necessarily feel committed to him beyond this year, whatever. So you kind of take a chance there.
I looked this up when we did our show last Friday. Do you remember what Derek Carr's cap hit for next season is?
Yeah, like in like 60 million, something obnoxious.
I don't know why Over the Cap isn't letting me.
But if you add someone super cheap like Howell, then you kind of you can live with that because you have such a bargain there.
You can't live with it. It's crazy. Why won't this?
Well, it's the best way to manage it is my point. If you're gonna be spending a lot of money here and you're constricted in terms of getting someone great, and you have to ball on a budget, so to speak, then I think Howell is your way to do that. But anyway, whatever.
Man, Derek Carr's page on Over the Cap is like broken. Maybe that's a sign.
Over the Cap is a little like, well, at least when I know for the Eagles, I was just talking about this recently on last week's episode of BGN Radio with Jimmy, like not outdated, but it's just the way some teams do their contracts now. It doesn't get like perfectly represented in a graph. It's kind of like more complex. Anyway, I'm not trying to say Over the Cap doesn't do a great service. They do. I just think some of these contracts in the NFL are getting like more and more convoluted that it's kind of like totally hard to interpret from our level.
Okay.
Not all of them, but some.
All right. So we might have to do an emergency NFC East podcast. You never know. A mixtape.
Well,
you never know how this will go.
I mean, I'm going to be away for.
No, but again, if it's important and emergency enough, we'll find a way to get an episode out. That's all I'm saying. Like whether you can be here or not. So, I'll
also take recommendations in addition for the rat problem, which is so
infestation.
Annoying. For Clearwater/Tampa, Florida, where I'll be going for my friend Zach's, who was previously cameoed here on the NFC East Mixtape. It was that time I lied to you and said it was Holden. Yeah. And it was actually Zach. Yeah, he's going to be getting married in April, so we're going to his bachelor party again in Tampa/Clearwater. So any recommendations there are welcomed.
Wow. What are you going to listen to on the plane?
Probably Rob has a podcast, Survivor podcast, because I'm flying out on Thursday. So, I'll just have watched the episode, season 46, episode 2 of Survivor, which is also, I believe, a 2-hour episode like the premiere was. So there should be plenty to chew on from that episode. And not a sponsor, but shout out to Rob has a podcast. They're doing great stuff over there. Love their coverage of Survivor, as we've talked about before.
So ever since I started doing the radio show, kind of tired. You know what I mean? It's a 6 a.m. show. So, getting up early. Last week, I had to do something that I was really embarrassed by. My wife and we started watching the Survivor premiere on Wednesday. I couldn't make it, dude. It was 2 hours. I know we talked about this, but I couldn't make it. We had to stop it halfway through.
I get it.
I felt soft.
My parents were in the same boat. They're like at least 20 years older than you. Yep.
Well, they're the best. Okay. Well, if you can listen to RHAP on the way. You can also do a lot of things or listen to a lot of things, including the NFC East Mixtape playlist, which we mentioned a little while ago. Now, Rachel is out this week. Speaking of people missing, but
she's on vacation,
right? Kissed. She has the palm tree as her I don't even know how to do that in Slack. Do you know how to do that?
I do. I can show you, I guess.
Okay. Okay. It's not, I don't know how, but I see it all the time. Anyway, Michael Kist is producing this episode of the NFC East Mixtape, and next week too, I believe. So I asked Kist for a song. We asked Kist, although I typed the message, whatever. And he has chosen "Stick Season" by Noah. Is it Kahan?
I don't know.
So that's what Kist has gone with. So you've never heard this song either?
No, Kist always suggests a song that I haven't heard of, which I appreciate because it gives me a chance to listen to something new.
Well, and he added something depressing for Kelce retiring. So
sure,
not a spoiler, but I mean those are Kist words, not mine.
Yeah.
So, are you ready for my song, or you want to go first?
I'll go first because I will piggyback off the same theme, and I was thinking about what song should I pick to fit the theme of Jason Kelce walking away, and I think it's only right that we have our second Whitney Houston song on the playlist because we already have Dance with Somebody on there from, I believe, Rachelle put on there. I'm going to go with I Will Always Love You. Fantastic song. Arguably one of the, I think, best songs ever in just terms of such an emotional connection. So simple, but so emotional. So I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. I know it's originally Dolly Parton, but I mean, come on. Whitney Houston's version is just...
Have you seen The Bodyguard?
No.
I mean, me neither. Look, it's a great song and a great pick by you, certainly relative to the circumstances. There are so many Whitney songs that I feel like people don't know. And like, this is not my favorite personally. I would put So Emotional up there. When you said the word emotional, that's what I thought about. So, good pick. Are you ready for mine?
Let's hear it.
We've talked a lot about, and I think I mentioned this to you and Rachelle last week, and neither of you cared, that we're at like 126 songs or something like that now, which is really cool. I mean, like, we've really built something here.
I don't think we didn't care.
Neither of you answered or said anything. Neither of you were like, that's cool. I was expecting, like, I don't know, like some sort of reactionary emoji.
I mean, sometimes you're checking notifications in a place where, like, you kind of just check it and then you forget to follow up. You can be like in a line at a grocery store.
It would have been cool
to
have heard something back from either of you, but whatever.
But you know what I'm saying, though. That happens.
We've talked a lot about the transformational power of music and how, like, one song can just transport you somewhere, right? Like, it can just take you back or take you there, wherever. It's March now, kind of spring breaky time of year. And this song reminds me of spring break in high school. Like, it's just like that time of year. Are you familiar with the starting line?
Yeah, of course.
The Best of Me by the starting line is my choice.
Like, if I heard it, I'd probably know it. I can't think of it in my head.
It's like, tell me what you thought about when you were.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yep, 100%. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if we just violated a regulation or something, but
I don't think so. I think it'll be safe.
Okay.
I do want to say, not adding to the playlist, but shout out to this. Like, this was a fun revelation for me. So my friend James Seltzer, former BGN Radio co-host, and now on WIP for the morning show in Philadelphia. I was hanging out with him last week, and his daughter was singing "Who Let the Dogs Out," and I was like, I didn't know the Baja Men were like still around and that capacity. Like, kids still love, apparently.
It's a great, like, what is it called? Like, kids bop. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a great kids bop song. So
100%. So I'm just glad it's still around for the kids.
Yeah.
I think that's fun.
That was a big day or a big time when that song was like PK'd. Talk about like transportational music or whatever. Did you ever have, as we get out of here, and I would like to hear if any mixologists ever did, it wasn't Kids Bop, but did you ever have a Now CD when they would have like Now 91 or whatever?
Yeah,
and it was like,
I don't know if I had one, but I remember all the commercials for them.
Yeah, and it was basically just like the best songs at the moment in time they put on. I don't know how that was a profitable business. Like, how were they allowed to do that? You know what I mean?
There's a lot of weird things with the music industry, I feel like, in terms of what you can and can't make money off of. Somehow artists can't make money off their own songs, pretty much, but everyone else can.
As we leave, Brandon, I would like you to tell us your favorite thing to drink out of a glass. Not a bottle, but out of a glass. And a glass, not a cup, a glass.
What do you mean a glass?
Like a cup that is made out of glass, a glass.
Okay.
Yeah, because some things like are too cold to drink out of glasses. You want them out of like.
But you're not talking about like a fancy glass necessarily, like a wine glass.
As long as the material is glass, not the wine glass you had wine in when you were telling us about the rat thing the first time in the happy hour. I'm talking just any container that transports liquid from a place to your throat
Okay. The first thing that comes to mind, not necessarily the best, but the first thing that comes to mind is it's like a blue moon. Like, I like a draft. I want to when
Mm,
I get a beer at a bar. Typically, it depends, but I don't want the bottle or the can. I want some. Like, I look at the draft. Man, I'm not the only person to do this. I'm sure. I'm just saying. Like, am especially inclined to look at the draft list, try to find one from there, because there's just something really, I think, nice and refreshing to taking, and this the mouthfeel of taking a sip
great call.
from a glass, like and a blue moon's just like really, it's just, I think you get the orange slice in there, just refreshing. I think it's a really good, refreshing experience.
We've done enough mixtapes at this point that I have definitely repeated myself on stuff. But how about you? Did try Line and Kugel Sunset Wheat, right? Or you didn't?
I did. Wait, no, I couldn't find it. I last
Yeah.
summer I went to too many places to try to find it, but I was doing more research on it as I was doing that, and I think they just don't have it in my area, which is unfortunate.
You put an orange slice in there. I promise you, it tastes like Fruity Pebbles. I promise.
I trust it, and I am envious of this experience. Maybe I can find some in Florida. Who knows?
Brandon, say the words Fruity Pebbles, and then we leave.
Fruity Pebbles.